So for our session this afternoon, we have a packed agenda today, and we are getting started this afternoon. I'll just do a very general introduction to the session today before I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Susie O'Connor, who's going to give us a little wave, who's our programme lead for early interventions and neurodivergent in children and young people at NHS Education for Scotland. We also unfortunately don't have Ms Todd, Minister for Social Care, Mental Wellbeing and Sport. She's not able to join us this afternoon, but we do have a video from Ms Todd to share with you. Unfortunately, we don't have the Cabinet Secretary for Education and Skills is also unable to join us today, and she sends her apologies for not being able to join us for the session. We will also have some input this afternoon from David Garbett, who's the chair of NHS Education for Scotland board, and he will introduce himself as he comes into his session. Susie is then going to take us through the One Good Adult resource, which is featured on the digital learning map, and Susie will take us through the digital learning map and how to find the One Good Adult job description resource on there. And David Mackay from Children's Scotland, give us a wave, David, thank you, is going to give us a little bit of the background information in relation to where did One Good Adult job description come from. And David will share that with us at some point this afternoon. And then really excited also to have colleagues from North Ayrshire Council joining us this afternoon, who are going to give us an overview of a pilot study that they did with the One Good Adult job description. And Ailey and her colleagues, Christine and Gail, are going to share an overview of that pilot work that they did recently there. We also unfortunately don't have our colleagues from Aberdeen City Council today. Aberdeen City Council also took part in a pilot study for us. So a very special mention to Aberdeen City Council, who are not able to join us today, but you can find information about their pilot within the implementation guidance, which Susie will be sharing with us shortly. So the main event today is to learn about the One Good Adult job description, and for us that's been involved in this piece of work for some time now, this really captures the power of relationships to foster that resilience and optimise those outcomes for children and young people. Sadly, we've not got time at the end. We've got a packed agenda today. We've not got time at the end for question and answers. But please do, if you've got any questions or any queries or any comments you want to make, pop them in the chat function. I will be here throughout and my colleagues will be here throughout. And if we can, we will answer your questions within the chat. And if we can't answer them on the day today, then we'll make sure we make an effort to get back to you following the session. And as I say, we are recording the session, so this will be made available for your colleagues. So first up, we have our Minister for Social Care, Mental Wellbeing and Sport, who's going to share an overview and introduction of the resource. So hopefully you're all going to be able to hear this.
Hello everyone. I'm sorry I'm unable to join you live for the launch of the One Good Adult job description, but I am absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to contribute virtually to this event. The agenda looks really interesting and I hope you'll get a lot out of the discussion this afternoon. The One Good Adult job description was inspired by direct conversations with children and young people, and more recently through the Children and Young People's Network at Children in Scotland. The children and young people captured the skills and qualities needed by all adults working in the sector, whether that be in health services, schools, community services, sports organisations, as well as volunteer groups and parents and carers, to enable them to develop safe, nurturing and encouraging relationships with children and young people that make a real difference to their life chances. There's a strong body of evidence embedded in public health policy about the pivotal difference one good adult can make to a child or young person's life. The job description's consistent with getting it right for every child, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the Promise, which are crucial for the delivery of Scotland's vision for children, young people and families to make Scotland the best place in the world to grow up. The essential and desirable criteria, skills and experience identified to be one good adult won't come as a surprise to any of you. Calm, trusting, kind, good listener, open-minded and fair, to name a few, are all skills that can enhance our relationships with children and young people. I'd like you to pass on my thanks to all the children and young people who've been involved at various stages in the development of the One Good Adult job description. The One Good Adult job description was part of the work of the Children and Young People's Mental Health and Wellbeing Joint Delivery Board. A range of resources have been developed to assist the workforce to support children and young people's mental health and wellbeing. Our NHS Education Scotland, NES colleagues will say more about these shortly. During this webinar, you'll hear from NES and Children in Scotland about the One Good Adult development and about the pilots in North Ayrshire Council and Aberdeen City. You'll also hear about a new training package aimed to help staff develop the skills to be good adults for the children and young people that they work with. Since this resource was developed, we've established our new Joint Strategic Board for Child and Family Mental Health Board. The board is co-chaired by Scottish Government and COSLA and has a strategic overview of children and families' mental health work, spanning preconception to young adult, as well as the perinatal period. The board will help to ensure that our cross-government mental health work is aligned and coordinated in a way which benefits everyone across the whole age range. The mental health and wellbeing of children and young people continues to be an absolute priority for the Scottish Government. Over the past 4 years, there's been significant progress across various areas supporting children and young people's mental health. For example, new and enhanced community-based supports and services for emotional well-being and tackling emotional distress, available in every local authority. We continue to provide 16 million a year to local authorities to ensure that every secondary school has access to school counselling services. This is now in place right across Scotland. Early learning from our neurodevelopmental service specification tests of change has shown the importance of early identification and support for children and young people and their families has a positive effect on their mental health and well-being. And recent CAMHS statistics show both an increase in the CAMHS workforce and significant and sustained progress in addressing long waiting lists and meeting waiting time targets. We've invested £66 million in our community's mental health and wellbeing fund for adults 16 years and over since 2021. The fund supports grassroots community groups in building resilience and aims to reduce the need for clinical interventions and improve mental well-being within communities by supporting community-led initiatives and local support services. 120 million to NHS boards and integrated joint boards for the enhanced mental health outcomes framework. And crucially, the voices and experiences of children, young people and their families have been at the centre of all this work, and wider engagement across government is a key part of our work to improve access to mental health support. In closing, I'd like to thank all of you for your unwavering commitment to supporting children and young people right across Scotland, which is vital to ensuring that our younger citizens grow up loved and respected. I'd like you to think about how the One Good Adult resource could be implemented within your local community. I hope you enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.
So I think we have David Garbett next, talking from NES.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon to take part in this launch of this information session about the programme One Good Adult I think it's an extremely important occasion for us all, and I'm proud to be representing NES, but I'm also proud to be representing my role as a director on the board of the Promise Scotland. And so I can see aspects of this program which touch on both of those delivery platforms. And I think we all have an element which we will be able to help to support and to roll out this in a much wider concept. For my part, my undertaking will be around taking it into the health and care sectors, which we have a really strong link with through our training program, TURAS, and you'll hear a bit more about that later on, I think. But I'm delighted at the part we've been able to play in developing the materials which accompany this package. And you've heard from the Minister how much effort and resource has been put into developing a whole range of packages that relate to the mental health of children and young people. We still have a good way to go, but this particular initiative is another step forward in what has been a very successful development over a number of years in tackling different aspects of mental health and well-being. There is a comprehensive program which will continue in the future, and I'm happy that NES is playing a very strong part across all of these programs. I would therefore like to thank all the wonderful NES staff for their enthusiasm and drive in making that happen, but also their colleagues in what is a very wide collaborative partnership which exists to support these initiatives. And that ranges right across Scottish Government, Children in Scotland, COSLA, Aberdeen City Council, the North Ayrshire Council, and the Joint Delivery Board. And most importantly of all, the children who've been involved in this project. They've been fantastic participants, and I take my hat off to the people who've collected all the evidence that the children have managed to produce around this project, and you'll see more of that later. But I'm hugely encouraged by the strength of that partnership, and I think that will help to carry this initiative forward in the future. In support of it, my board is about to appoint an apprentice board member who will be a young person who will attend our board, and board members will continue to hear the voice of children and young people when we're making our major decisions about the way forward in health. And we'll act on what we hear, and I hope that will roll out around different boards across Scotland in the future. So I look forward to NES being at the heart of this development and future developments, and to us taking it forward across all of the sectors in Scotland. I see that you represent a huge range of them already, and I encourage everyone here today to be an active advocate for this and all of the other programs that help with that mental health and well-being for children and young persons. I'm happy now to pass over to the rest of the team, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, David. I think, Lorna, you're going to share my slides. Thank you very much. You've done that. So good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks to the Minister, Marie Todd, and to yourself, David, from NES, for your inspiring opening remarks. So I'm really looking forward to the session this afternoon, and I hope that you all get loads out of it. So my job this afternoon, the One Good Adult job description is actually just one of a suite of training resources delivered by NES and multi-agency stakeholders at the request of the Scottish Government and COSLA's Children and Young People's Mental Health and Wellbeing Joint Delivery Board. So all of these resources are aimed at helping staff to meet the mental health and wellbeing needs of children and young people, and they're all hosted on a new digital learning map that I'm going to show you in a minute, as well as on our digital learning platform, TURAS Learn, which is open to all staff. So it is not just for health and social care staff, it's open to everybody. So my talk today, I don't have very long to talk, and I think Lorna's going to keep me to time. So my talk today is just a very quick whistle-stop tour of the new resources. So we're hoping that you'll engage with them more fully in your own time and that you'll find them all helpful. So just next slide, Lorna, please. So this is the front page of the new digital learning map. So we will pop the link for this into the chat so that you can access it just now yourselves. But it's also really easy to find, so you can always just search the internet for digital learning map and NES, and you'll find the link that way as well. So the purpose of this map, as David mentioned, I think there's no shortage of training materials available about children and young people's mental health and well-being, but what is tricky is knowing what training is based on evidence. So we know it actually should make a difference to children and young people's mental health and well-being, but also is likely to change staff practice in helpful ways. So for example, we know that broadly speaking, training on its own doesn't tend to change somebody's working practices. So it takes some form of on-the-job support, like coaching, for example, for people to feel confident enough in themselves to do things differently in real life. So every training that's included on our digital learning map has to say what evidence exists that it will benefit children and young people's mental health and well-being, as well as what supports are included in the training to support staff to make the changes that they need to make to their practice. So I'm just going to walk you around the rest of the digital learning map now. So next slide, please, Lorna. So this is just the background information section, essentially explains just the nuts and bolts of how the digital learning map works. So you can click on each of these buttons just to find out more about that. And next slide, Lorna, please. The next section along is how to use this resource. So this explains how the map's structured and how to use it. It's got some helpful case studies in it, as well as a glossary and references. And we really hope that it's all self-explanatory and clear, but please use the feedback forms that are embedded in the site just to let us know if more guidance would be helpful about how to use the map. And next slide, next slide, Lorna, thanks. So the next page is the resources search page, which is how you go about finding training to meet your learning needs. So we based it on the knowledge and skills framework. So at the top there you can see practice level, which is informed, skilled or enhanced. And it's really up to you or your line manager to decide what practice type's right for you across different mental health and well-being topics. So informed is for all staff at one level, and enhanced is for those with a lot of contact with children and young people who have mental health needs. And that's as a key part of their job role or practice setting. And this will often be staff who work in child and adolescent mental health settings. So the skilled level sits in between these two, and maybe that's teachers, but none of this is hard and fast. It's just intended to be helpful and to help staff know that they don't necessarily have to have all the answers about children and young people's mental health and well-being. So just below that, you can see if training has a cost, then we include that information, and you can choose to search for only training that's no cost, or only training that costs, or both for everything. So it's split up that way as well. And then finally, all of the training is mapped against the knowledge and skills framework's 5 dimensions. So that's them there: child development and attachment, mental health in children and young people, engagement, containment, communication, identification, understanding of needs and supports and interventions. And these all expand when you click on them. So you can tick the boxes to search for training that's about the specific thing that you want to find out more about. So next slide, Lorna, please. You can see here that I've clicked on that first dimension, so that's child development and attachment, and you can see that you can choose to look for training that covers all of these areas that fall within that broad umbrella term. So I hope that makes sense. So there's this search function there that allows you to put filters on what you find, but there's also a resources A to Z link at the top of the home page where you can view an alphabetical list of all training that's included on the map. So to date, we have quality assured and mapped 44 training resources, and we have 40 more just waiting to go up. So there's going to be 84 high quality trainings available on this map for you to look at very shortly. Okay, and then the front page of the next slide, sorry, please, Lorna. So the front page of the digital learning map has these buttons that start with case studies at the top. So the case studies we developed with education colleagues, and they just explain how to use the map across different settings. And then below that, there's frequently asked questions and answers. And then we have the link to supporting children and young people SWAYS, and there's a whole load of lovely information in there, so we're very excited about. I was wondering if this button should be bigger, actually, is what I'm thinking, because this is where you'll find the One Good Adult job description, along with the implementation guidance with case studies from North Ayrshire and Aberdeen City, as well as the University of Edinburgh and NES. So you'll find implementation guidance in there, and a lovely reflective tool that the probation teachers made in North Ayrshire that Ailey's going to tell you more about. So we also have a collection of training for early years staff, and that's for those who support the mental health and wellbeing of babies, infants and young children, and a first point of contact SWAY, which intends to standardise the responses that children get when they ask for assistance from adults with their mental health and wellbeing. And then below that, we have a community-based supports and services SWAY, and we have just finished this, and we're also very excited about this. So Ms. Todd talked about the investment that's gone into local authorities to creating support services for children and young people. So we've just finished scoping each health board area to see what's available, and we brought it all together here in this way. So please tell all your colleagues about this, and we'll continue to liaise with colleagues in the boards and update this regularly. And if you could also please use the feedback function just to let us know if we've missed anything from your areas, or if anything isn't happening anymore and we should take it out. So we'll keep that as a live document. And then last but of course not least, the Promise SWAY, so training to help staff meet the needs of care experienced children and young people. And the final button is about staff support. So we know that when you're engaging with distressed children and young people, staff support is crucial. So that idea that you can't pour from an empty jug. So this section has links to resources like the NES Wellbeing Planning Tool to prompt good self-care, and we'll continue to update that. And then finally, we've created a training evaluation toolkit with copyable tools to let you check if a training activity actually makes a difference to staff knowledge, to their practice, and ultimately to children and young people's mental health and wellbeing. So I really hope that you find that useful. And we've embedded feedback links in that as well, so you can let us know how useful that is, essentially. I hope it's useful. And then finally, the very important job description. So I am delighted to hand over to David from Children in Scotland, who's going to tell us all about the amazing children and young people who wrote the One Good Adult job description and how they did that. So I'll hand over to you now, David. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Susie. If you bear with me just 1 second, I'm just going to share my presentation. Thanks very much, everyone. It's lovely to be here and great to have so many people here in the room. My name is David Mackay. I'm Head of Policy Projects and Participation at Children in Scotland, and our team kind of does what it says on the tin. We deliver direct participation and engagement work with children and young people, and we help sort of amplify their voices and make sure their voices are heard in decision making about legislation, but also implementation of different policies. So we've got about 7 strong team at Children in Scotland. We are a national membership organisation, so we're a national charity, and we support children, young people, families, and also the children's sector workforce. So we are working towards a Scotland where all children can flourish. And one of our key priorities is that children and young people's views will be listened to, taken seriously and acted upon. As I said, children and families' voices need to be heard in policy and legislation development, but also what's happening in practice, so on a day-to-day basis. Just a bit of a shout out for Children in Scotland. Please do follow us online. We've got Twitter and LinkedIn accounts, and there's lots of great opportunities for the workforce and professionals, but also for some of the children and young people that you are working with. So please, I would recommend everyone going online and trying to follow us or signing up to our newsletter. You can also join us as a member if you want to be an active part of our network. So why do children and young people's views matter? I'm afraid Marie Todd has kind of stolen my thunder a bit with her video slightly earlier on, but children and young people have a right to be heard and for their views to be given due weight under the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, which has recently been incorporated into Scots law. So it's a key part of the UNCRC is Article 12, which is respect for children's views. But hopefully everyone here knows there are lots of other articles in the UNCRC. Article 6 covers a right to life, survival and development. Article 24 covers a right to health and health services. And then we have Article 28 and 29, which link to education and the goals of education and supporting every child's personality, talents and abilities to develop to the full. So it's really important. We have now incorporated the UNCRC, and it's really important that children and young people's views are listened to and taken into consideration. Children and young people's views also are a key part of other policy and legislation that are included in Scotland. We have heard reference to the Promise already, but also the Children and Young People's Act and things like Getting It Right for Every Child, the national approach to supporting children and young people's well-being. And we often hear from practitioners, but also from children and young people themselves about the implementation gap. So we know in Scotland there's some really fantastic and very progressive policy. I think a lot of people look to Scotland and are really pleased to see the progress we've made. But as I'm sure many of you practitioners will know, working with children and young people on a day-to-day basis, we often hear about the implementation gap. Just because we've got great legislation and great policy doesn't actually necessarily mean it's leading to improved outcomes for children and young people. So listening to their voices can help us understand how and where we can make improvements for them and really lead to the outcomes that we want to see for children and young people. Just going to move on to my next slide. So our work around the One Good Adult project, I'll just explain a little bit about what we did. We worked with a group of 12 children and young people from 7 different local authorities across Scotland. So we did this back in 2022, and we took on the existing sort of job description, the draft of the job description that had been made, and worked with the young people over 4 online sessions. You can see some of them up there on the screen here. We discussed the term mental health and what good mental health looks like. And then we introduced the concept of a good adult and explored and reviewed the One Good Adult job description, and we were able to bring it to a kind of conclusion and make sure the young people's views and inputs were fully reflected in the finalised job description. We also developed some basic resources to capture young people's views and a project report, which you can see there on the screen, and there's links to that in the various resources that Susie mentioned earlier. When we started our work with children and young people, we always like to start from basics, if you like, and so we started off working with the group trying to understand the term mental health and well-being, and the group had some really sort of interesting and unique perspectives on this, and so I wanted to include some of these. I'm not going to read them out to you, but they understand about the term mental health and about well-being. They said we all have mental health. Mental health is how you feel inside your head, like emotions and feeling calm. Mental health affects how you are feeling. It can make you both sad and happy. And then they recognized that there were certain things that you could do to improve your mental health, like going for a walk or taking medication, and some things that you can't change and you have to adapt and work with. And they also recognize that it can impact how young people react to different situations. So then we moved on to talking about good adults and what good adults and supportive adults look like. So we talked about physical and mental health and who you might go to in different circumstances. And then we developed that looking at mental health. We used this really nice exercise. You'll probably recognize this from Jamboard. I don't know if anyone else worked with children and young people over the pandemic, but the Jamboard came in real handy over that period. So we use this head, hands, heart exercise to identify the kind of key attributes of supportive adults and to sort of start those discussions. So the head was, what do these adults know? What do they know? The hands was, what do they do? What do supportive adults do? And the heart was, what are they like and what different personality traits do they have? And the young people came up with some really sort of positive and interesting insights into that. Here are some of the things that developed on from the conversations that we started. So we had some initial discussions and then we followed up with that in the next session. So they talk and share about themselves. They're not just there trying to quiz you. So that idea of being professional, but also opening up to children and young people and sharing a bit of your own personality, recognizing that there are boundaries and yes, sort of limitations to what information you're sharing. They don't talk as if you're not in the room. They treat you as equal. They're warm, kind, calm, and put you at ease, and that they're welcoming. And they make you feel like another human. So really obvious things, but I think it's important to remind ourselves how valuable these interactions are with young people and how we're sort of presenting ourselves to them. It can be really challenging to kind of maintain that when you're working in a busy environment, but really relationships really are at the heart. So the young people developed this job description and they said it's really important that children and young people's views are listened to. Please take time to consider the different parts of the job description and look at our drawings and quotes. So this is the job description in its entirety. I'm not gonna go through it here, but we asked the young people to kind of develop some resources from that. So I'm going to just play a very short video here, which shows one of the resources that they developed. So this is a Sway resource where they have their own audio recordings, but they also produce some drawings and quotes that are captured in this lovely interactive resource. And the young people decided Sway was the best method to show this because this was a resource that they were familiar with using at schools and they were used to making presentations through Sway. I love this picture here. You can do it. I believe in you. That's one of the messaging. That's some of the messaging they wanted good adults to give to children and young people. And I'm going to let them share in their own words some of the key words that they picked out from the job description that they felt were the most important. Susie, I can see you here. So can you just give me a thumbs up when you can hear the audio?
We want a good adult to be
calm,
approachable,
encouraging,
reliable,
trustworthy, hopeful, respectful, inspiring,
consistent,
welcoming,
realistic,
thoughtful,
supportive,
understanding,
kind.
good at listening.
So they were some of the key words that really stood out to the young people. As I also mentioned, they did some drawings and resources that they created. So they wanted people to be open-minded and be friendly and remember to smile. They said they wanted people who were working with and alongside children and young people to be thoughtful and not selfish. And they said it was really important that adults treated young people as individuals. So all children and young people are individuals, and adults need to remember, they said, that we all have our own individual needs. They also said good adults don't talk down to you. And they wanted to ensure that people working with and alongside children and young people knew about intersectionality. We talked quite a lot about intersectionality and how this was represented. It's quite I guess a challenging term sometimes to explain to people, but they said children and young people aren't just defined by just one aspect of their lives or experiences. So there are multiple factors, I think that's shown in this image here, that can affect a child or a young person, their experiences and how they see the world. Most importantly, though, children and young people wanted the adults that they work with and alongside to be kind. So I think that's really important to keep hold of and remember. I've got a few final messages for you that I'd like to share. So please do take time to read and think about the One Good Adult job description. As it says here in the graphic, it really is a very important job description. As Marie Todd highlighted, one relationship can have a hugely positive impact on a child or young person. So I think it's not to be underestimated that. We've heard that regularly through our work, whether it's at school, in a healthcare setting or environment. So please do kind of keep that and take that with you in your work. And remember that children and young people's voices are powerful. So please do listen to children and young people and always keep them at the heart of your thinking and decision making. And then just finally, on my last slide, a message from the young people. We hope this has helped you to think about all the ways you can be a good adult. So thank you and good luck. I hope I haven't gone too far over my time then. I'm sorry, I could see there were some messages coming through, but I couldn't tell.
Thank you so much, David. And only just a couple of minutes over, but there's been a lot of people talking already this afternoon, so really helpful to just hear that bit of background about how the One Good Adult job description had come about. So now we're going to hand over to our colleagues in North Ayrshire, who are going to give us that overview of their pilot and how they use the resource within their local authority. So Ailey, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to switch my mic off and I'll pop my video up, or I'll pop the PowerPoint presentation up from this side.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Lorna. So thanks everybody for giving us the opportunity to join with you today. So we are some of the members of the One Good Adult team here at North Ayrshire Council within the Education Service. We've got myself, I'm Quality Improvement Officer. We've got Gail Novak with us, who's our Principal Psychologist, and Christine Grace, who is the Head Teacher from our Professional Learning Academy. Could you do the next slide, please? Thank you. Yeah, so we took 4 core areas of work as we piloted the One Good Adult resource, and we're just going to spend the rest of the time that we have available to us describing some of the work that we did. We supported probation teachers with self-evaluation. They worked very hard, and Christine's going to tell you how that came about and some of the evaluations of the work that they did. Gail and her team have embedded the One Good Adult resource and concept into whole school nurture and used it to gather children and young people's views. I've been working alongside the Promise team with, through the multi-agency work that we do here at the council to help to develop, to use the resource to support our care experienced children and young people. And we have done a bit of comms and training, but you can never do enough comms work. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we localised the work of children in Scotland, and we asked our North Ayrshire children what One Good Adult means to them, and this little video illustrates what they told us.
One Good Adult. It's important that all young people have a good adult in their life. Being a good adult is very important. We asked young people in North Ayrshire what makes a good adult. This is what they told us.
Cam, welcoming. Who is caring? They ask you how you are. Helping someone get to their best. 5. If they struggle, then helping them more than other people. If people need it more than others. Very approachable and stuff like that. Quite caring and everything. She was caring. She was helping people. That listen to you and take your opinion under consideration. She would listen to any point you have to say, even if it was a disagreement with her.
In North Ayrshire, we want all young people to have good adults in their lives.
Thanks very much. Lorna, if you could move it on to the next slide, and I'm going to hand over to Gail Novik. Oh, thank you.
Hi, thank you again for welcoming us along today. I'm going to speak a wee bit about how this links in with the nurturing approach we have in North Ayrshire and our wider work on relationships and behaviour. You'll see from this overview slide that we've got a number of areas that we've been working on, and promoting positive relationships have been joined by promoting positive relationships and behaviour, and I suppose that's in acknowledgement of some of the challenges that some people are highlighting for us in education at the moment, that relationships should link with behaviour, but also that relationships are at the core of that. So this one good adult needs to sit at the core of that. And although there's a lot of noise out there at the moment about some of the challenges, I think that relationships and one good adult needs to sit under all of that. So we've very much focused on the nurturing North Ayrshire. We've been doing that for quite some time, but we're also using the One Good Adult to look at supporting our more dysregulated and disengaged learners, because it's even more important to have that one good adult to support them, and embedding the whole school mental health and wellbeing as one of our focus, and we've still got restorative approaches in there. So if you can move on to the next slide, thanks. So I mentioned about our whole school nurture. We never miss an opportunity to emphasise that. But this year in particular, we've been really focusing on how we move that on to make sure that we've got clearer evaluation and implementation. I think one of the previous speakers talked about how young people want there to be consistency. And one of the things that we noticed was, although we have some very, very good practice in North Ayrshire, that consistent practice that they can always go to every adult, when we spoke to some of our stakeholders, wasn't always there. So when we did do the focus group for our children and young people, that was what some of them said. We wanted an honest opinion. So while some of them said what one good adult consisted of, they also said that occasionally there wasn't a good adult in their school that they could go to. I think there was only 1 or 2 of our 32 young people that said that, but that's still important for us to recognise. So how do we ensure that that's a consistent approach, that they can all have that one good adult? And so we've looked at developing a benchmarking tool to look at all the different features of nurturing practice, and in that we've included the one good adult as part of our benchmarking, and we link it very much into the Education Scotland tool of applying nurture as well. Okay, next slide. So you've already seen the little video, so I'm not going to emphasise that, because I think we've talked at length at what children said, and you've seen some of the quotes, but very much, as I said, the children and young people did feedback to us what they thought that meant in the context of nurture. So while we're talking about mental health and wellbeing, we were obviously asking them as well about that kind of nurturing approach and what that looks like for them. And you've heard some of those quotes already. So given the time, I'll go on to the next slide. Again, we put it into sort of themes. So, you know, there was aspects about personal attributes. So it's very much about the adults, you know, having those kind of caring approaches, but also how they do it. And I think you spoke about that as well, David, about how adults do this. So it's an action, it's not just who they are. And that they prioritise relationships. I always like the term keeping in mind, you know, and children and young people very much appreciate when we keep them in mind and we mention them and we think about them in that respect. And someone who supports their learning, because we want to link this as well to the learning outcomes for these children and young people. And relationships and having one good adult very much lies at the heart of that for us as well. Okay, next slide. So we're stealing a phrase. Carolyn will recognise this: better relationships, better behaviour, better learning. We've said better relationships, better behaviour, improved well-being. And what we're looking to do next with this is we're going to use our benchmarking tool to make sure that we audit that consistent practice across the authority, and we use the key qualities of one good adult within that. We've updated our whole school nurture, and we've got slides on one good adult within all of that, and we've just done that to every school in the authority again. And moving on, we're going to have a kind of 3-tiered approach where we are looking at that universal, targeted, intensive approach to promoting positive relationships and behaviour. Oops, can you go back a wee sec just to finish that? Thank you. And going through all those tiers, we are talking about areas that we think are important for one good adult, attunement being one of them. All behaviour is communication, that the adult is attuned to what the young person's communicating. Adult presence is another area that we're looking at, and we've taken that from building on positive relationships, which is based on non-violent resistance, which some authorities have been taking forward, but we've renamed it building on positive relationships. And it talks about adult presence, and I think that that goes very nicely along with the one good adult, because it's about adults being present in a positive way, but also having those expectations and boundaries for young people as well. So that warmth and support that runs alongside the expectations and boundaries. And I think that for one good adult, it's important to have both sides of those things. So we're looking at how we also develop our shared vision and values. And I suppose to steal from Paul Dix, this is how we do things in North Ayrshire. You know, we're looking at one good adult is what we do in North Ayrshire, and we want that to run through everything we do. So I'm going to pass to Christine, I think, or
Yep,
direct to you.
Christine.
Yep, me. Hi, my name is Christine Grace, and I am the head teacher of professional learning in North Ayrshire. So Ailey and Gail approached me to see how we could take the principles of one good adult and take the work that was happening and use it to support a tool or something that we could use with our teachers in terms of professional learning and self-evaluation. So one of my remits, I oversee the probationers. So we thought that they would be a really good target group to support with developing something that we could use. So out of the 70 probationers we had that year, this was 2 years ago, we got a group of about 12 to 13, I think it was 12 probationers, and they formed a working group. And we introduced the concept of one good adult. We'd introduced the concept to all of them. And from that, we got 12 who wanted to work with us and develop this tool. And with that group, we identified a baseline. What was their understanding of one good adult? And at that point, most of them, in fact, none of them had any knowledge of this. So this was something new to them. And we discussed how we could create something with this. So Susie came along and did an input for our small group, and from that they themselves broke into smaller working groups and went away and devised lots of different self-evaluation tools. So you can see here on the screen, we had some basic forms, which was just a simple rating 1 to 5, looking at some of these one good adult statements. We, being teachers and in education, we're trying to think of what are other educational tools that already resonate with teachers. So we looked at a Higgius style document and tried to put it into that rating of 6. And the final and the tool that we collectively decided was best was, if we can skip to the next slide, we can see, was a wheel. Now, the reason that this is the tool that it resonated and we decided to settle on is because it fits with the tools that we already use. Again, within education, we have wheels that the GTCS give us, obviously from looking at the standards. So this fits in with what teachers are already doing as part of self-evaluation. And around that wheel, we have some of the one good adult statements. And they can be interchangeable. So, you know, there's a number of different statements in one good adult. So you could put the ones in and populate it with the ones that that you are considering as a teacher, what you're self-reflecting against, and then it's just a simple 1 to 10. Once we had done that and we'd piloted it with our group of probationers, they came back and suggested alternative ways of using it. And what a number of the probationers in that pilot group had done with it is they had then taken this tool and used it to support restorative conversations with some of the young people in their class. And again, the children were used to this framework of working that 1 to 10 when they're looking at the Shinari statement. So it really worked well, and it was able to translate over to those conversations with the children themselves. Last slide. And then how we've evaluated that. As I said, we have piloted this. So this was 2 years ago. With last year's cohort of probationers, we introduced this again and asked them to use it, and we got some positive feedback. And we plan to do again the same this year. So we'll have sort of 3 years worth of a small numbers of probationer teachers using it to evidence the impact of it in these 2 ways, both as a self-evaluation tool and as a tool to support restorative conversations. Ailey.
Thanks. We're going to stop at this slide, Lorna. I'll just talk to this slide very briefly for a minute. So we've tried to embed this into wider practice, and some of the work that we're doing is within the local authority, we have a multi-agency promise operational group, and as part of that, a relationships subgroup. And you'll see there that one of our priority outcomes of the relationships subgroup is that all staff working in children's services will use the One Good Adult role profile to self-evaluate their relational practice, and that care experienced children will know that staff working with them have the knowledge and skills needed to provide relationship-based care. Again, we listened to our children. We had a promise conference where we were able to gather their views. They talked about what made the key attributes of a good listener, the key attributes of a good adult, and it reflected very much the work that was done with children in Scotland. We are rolling out to use the One Good Adult resource with our active schools coordinators, and they have embraced the One Good Adult resource and developed this poster that you can see on the screen. They are using it with adults and young people who are working with children. The QR code after today will be populated. That link will be populated with some of the information that is being launched today. So to finish off, this hasn't gone away. This is something that we're embedding as much as we can into our wider practice, keeping the voice of the children at the heart of what we're doing. And we thank you again for listening. I'm so sorry that we couldn't speak a bit longer. Lorna.
Oh, huge thanks, Ailey. And everybody's got so much to say. There's so much to share in relation to the whole story of the One Good Adult job description. And I hope today that's given everybody a flavour of the journey that we've been on in relation to the One Good Adult job description. And hopefully you all know where to find it and be able to access some of the extra resources which are available. So without further ado, I just want to say a massive thanks to everybody for coming along to our session today. I do have one quick ask of everybody before you go. If you don't mind, it wouldn't be an event without an evaluation form. We would really welcome your feedback in relation to our session today. And I just want to say a massive thanks to all of our presenters, including Ms. Todd, including David from NES, David from Children in Scotland, Susie from NES sharing the digital learning map, Ailey and our colleagues from North Ayrshire Council, and I can't believe I forgot Carolyn at the start of the call from Scottish Government, who's been our time checker and everything else this afternoon for us. So huge thanks to the team that's supported our session today, and thanks again for joining us. Please do fill in that evaluation and use the resource and share it widely with your friends and colleagues. Thank you so much.